My name is Sam Jenks, and welcome to another episode of The Way We Source, a podcast hosted by Kodiak Hub, where we share our talks with procurement practitioners, leaders, experts, consultants, content gurus, and people that we find downright inspiring, diving into the role that sourcing and procurement plays in the way we live. If you like today's episode, as always, make sure to rate the program and give us a follow. Today, we meet a practitioner turned founder, bringing incredible experience from over 25 years in procurement. Once upon a time, he spent over 20 years as a procurement pro and leader at Procter Gamble. Today, he serves as the founder of Digital Procurement Now, an expert advisory firm specialized in digital procurement. We're very pleased to welcome Nico Bac. Nico, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Excited about digging into something that I love to talk about, which is digital procurement. But let's take a step back first. What exactly does sourcing procurement, this role that you've been in for 20 plus years, what does this space mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I think most of us, we didn't really know what we got into, and I really thought I'd do this for a couple of years and then figure out something else to do. But this space kept me entertained for so long, and I've been traveling the world a bit. I was based in Asia for a while. I was based in various countries in Europe. Spent quite some time in the US. So it really gave me like a global perspective on business, which has been very interesting for all those years. So procurement really kept me entertained for all those years, and I'm still very excited about procurement and the role of procurement in really, growing the business and having a very positive impact on the overall business results. So excited.
And you've gotten out of bed every single morning, excited to go to your job, and it obviously gave you a broad context. What excites you today when you wake up in the morning about the space of procurement that maybe is something that you didn't think was possible years ago?
Yeah. Well, I think that at Procter Gamble, we basically say that 50% of innovation needs to come from the suppliers, right? So if you look at the products we have on shelf, the formulas, the packaging, the proposition, a lot of it actually is co-developed with our suppliers. And,
sure.
And that thing always really excites me, because then you work on the top line, you work on how to grow your business, how to bring innovations to life, how to improve the life of the world's consumers by getting better products out there. And to me, that's I think the most interesting part of procurement is to really be part of the business strategy and work with your business partners to help grow, your and their business together. So
yeah, and as a wise podcast guest once said on our show, if you could do it yourself, you would. So suppliers, of course, are incredibly important to a business's growth. So that's a great point, and I think something that we would love to double click on today. You mentioned about your Procter & Gamble experience. Over 20 years you were there. Could you break that time down into a few concrete chapters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first job was actually global packaging. And I think people always say, well, packaging you buy in the region for the region. So what's the point of having a global buyer for packaging? But actually, when we changed the model and said, okay, we have a single buyer responsible for this globally. It allowed me to travel the world, right? Visit suppliers all over the world, visit equipment manufacturers all over the world, and really understand what was going on in the industry.
Yeah.
So learned a lot, saw a lot, applied best practices from one region into another region. And that was really like category management and kind of owning spend yourself and driving it. And then from there on, I became more into becoming like a team leader, developing other buyers. Spend a lot of time in contract manufacturing, which is where you work with your suppliers to help innovate, bring new products to market in like the cosmetic space or fine fragrances space or air care. Some of the categories are pretty reliant. Those categories are pretty reliant on innovation coming from suppliers. And you kind of more into kind of business development, right? Is how how can your suppliers help you develop your business? And we had suppliers that were developing formulations for us, new chemistry, and pretty exciting as well. So and then the last station at P&G was responsibility for tail spend, which is kind of the stuff that procurement doesn't really like to touch because it's all the small stuff. And we figured out that to handle that properly, we really needed to take and bring some new technology into the business. And that tail spend responsibility became a source to pay digital transformation. So it was very much driven by a business problem that we couldn't solve without technology. So it wasn't like technology is looking for a problem. I mean, we had a
No.
problem and we couldn't solve it because just throwing more people at it, wasn't going to solve it, right? It didn't solve the problem of having so many suppliers and the business basically doing the sourcing on the tail themselves, which we
Right.
wanted to drive some more competition and some more transparency into these opportunities for our suppliers. And we went into like a digital transformation, which was so exciting that I decided that if we really want to increase the impact of procurement on the business, then I think procurement should be far more knowledgeable about what technology has to offer.
Yeah.
And I decided to focus my work there. And for about 4 years now, I've been helping ProcureTech companies kind of sell into procurement, and I've been helping procurement teams and departments figuring out what tech is kind of suitable for them
Yeah.
to really step change their performance to the business, right? So that's really the I mean and that's really, I mean, if you look at all the technology solutions out there and the innovation, etc., I mean, it's really two different worlds
Yeah.
that are brought together, right? The technology world and the procurement world. And
Well, let's double click there. What is it that you think makes it two different worlds? That's actually an interesting kind of take. What is
yeah,
so different about the worlds?
well, I think the procurement world is relatively conservative, right? It's like
Mm,
procurement teams are a part of big businesses where procurement is just kind of one element of what a big business does. I think procurement folks are kind of trained not to be too gullible, right? I mean, they're kind of
right.
they've been told so many things by suppliers that they're not the easiest audience to convince of doing things in a different way. Um, so that's the bricks and mortar world, right? I mean, kind of procurement teams as part of really big enterprises.
Yeah.
And I think that if enterprises aren't big, they often don't have procurement teams, right? So they tend to be the larger enterprises. And then on the ProcureTech world, I mean, you obviously have companies that have now hundreds of millions in sales, or maybe 1 or 2 billion in sales. But I mean, they come from they weren't they kind of the oldest one started maybe 20 years ago,
Right.
and relatively new. Young folks very much believe in the transformative power of technology.
Yeah.
More risk taking, getting funds from VC firms, Series A, B, I mean,
Yeah.
seed rounds. I mean, it's just, I mean, I find both of those worlds intriguing, right? But
Yeah. But
I think
maybe
there's,
a bit of an oxymoron of each other within the fibers of what they're about, so to say. Nonetheless, though, both focused on growth, right, and innovation. And I think that's also the misconception about procurement, right? And that's like the traditional view, and is that it's that it's only focused on costs. With that being said, there is the bottom line, right? You said it yourself. Procurement is a risk averse role, right? So I'm curious, does procurement dare to be bold and invest in emerging tech? You mentioned it yourself. There's a lot of emerging solutions that are out there. AI is running rampant within the space.
Mhm.
Does procurement dare to be bold?
I think yes, not always, but if people ask me like, what's the one thing that procurement should should be is to be bold, right? Because and I mean, and it depends a little bit, and I think if you're prepared to be bold, right, and to kind of lean forward in terms of what you can deliver to your business, I think you're much. I mean, you become much more interesting business partner to talk with, right, and to
Yeah.
work with. Yeah, so I like procurement leaders that are bold, and I think the ones that are bold, and there's plenty of bold procurement leaders. They tend to do better. They lean forward. They
Yeah.
attract the best talent. I think they generally ahead of others when it comes to leveraging technology, and they definitely have a much bigger impact on their businesses than the procurement leaders that aren't bold and are kind of more tactical in the way they operate.
Yeah.
And I actually I would say one thing: if you look for ProcureTech, but you're not willing to be bold, then you will get limited results, I think. And
Yeah,
you
and
also
I think that's a great point. The thing that I actually wanted to bring up and on that topic, so I would love to continue this thread, right? Is that a Gartner survey in 2023 stated that procurement currently only gets about 17% of the technology that they want approved.
yeah
So obviously, you need to come with a bold business case if you want to be able to, sharpen your elbows and make sure that you're able to get the technology that's going to help you and your team to be able to deliver and innovate, right? Where do you think that teams need to improve in building that business case for technology within procurement?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing is procurement is a business process, right? So I mean, of course, the procurement team plays an important part in that business process, but
Right.
in the end, it is a business process. And when we put our team together, like our source to pay digital transformation team, one third of the team was IT, one third of the team was finance, because we felt that all this e-invoicing and accounts payable related stuff, accounting related to what we buy, etc., was so important and so critical
Yeah.
that we needed finance to be like equal members of this team, and then
Sure.
one third was procurement. And so, with a multifunctional team, which is like, I think then you have a good chance to say, well, let's look at all processes that are related with our suppliers, and look at developing a digital plan across every part of the business, all the business processes with our suppliers.
And for the
And
businesses that you're advising, is that kind of the approach that you would tell them to take?
yes, I mean, that's the approach that I would like my clients to take. Now,
Yeah.
some of them are huge, like P&G, and they struggle to bridge these boundaries, or to break these silos between functions. And I think when you then break it down into smaller pieces, what you end up is many solutions that are kind of solving a point problem versus looking at, okay,
Right.
how do I make myself a much more attractive customer to deal with for my suppliers, right? And
Right.
how do I make kind of everything easy, and I get people to focus on where the value adds are versus transactional stuff.
And of course, coming to building a case, so to say, with a broader stakeholder perspective is always going to help you, in building your case. But again, let's double back to it. Why are procurement teams struggling, and how can they get their slice of the pie to be able to make sure that they can get the tech that they need?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the big insights from DPW, right? So, I mean, there's so much tech that comes your way, right? So, a lot of people have insights on, the tech that's on offer.
Mm.
But I think the tech that's on offer is already good, right? I mean, there's plenty of good tech out there. I think what's much more important is the ability to collaborate internally, right? So I just mentioned, this kind of one third IT, one third finance, one third procurement, and how you then, as a cross-functional team, define the business problem that you want to solve, and
Right.
then go after it. I think the other one is that a lot of procurement teams have all kinds of relationship with suppliers, but when you pick technology partners or technology companies to work with, the only way to be successful is to really partner with them, right? And to
Mm.
really kind of define up front kind of the joint deliverables and what you're
Right.
going after. And I don't see, I see many times that, people use RFP processes to, help define what suppliers to work with. And they never really get to understand these partners, right? And it's kind of at arm's length, right? And when you look at, I mean, a simple element like the cost of software, well, that's maybe one third of the cost of your transformation, right? So if a software costs X or X plus 20%, X plus 20% might be the best option actually, because you're able to get much bigger, better business results with
Right.
tech that's better, right? So that's also a big factor.
Do you mean that kind of the RFP, the auctioning approach of comparing quotes side by side is not the right way to buy technology?
Well, I mean, I think there's no two pieces of technologies that are the same. So, I
Mm.
mean, you're comparing apples with bananas with oranges.
Mm.
And, I mean, in the end, you need to find out which technology partner is best able to solve the problem that you want to solve. And
Yeah.
I find it very helpful to start with like a problem statement, and to say, well, and then with that problem statement, you see that your technology partners, when they say, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and you have defined that already, then sometimes they look at it and say, well, we're not the right partner here. And I mean,
Right.
that's kind of wonderful, because instead of spending weeks and months to figure out if there's still something, they say, well, no, we don't think we are the right partner. And then you're able to iterate much faster to solutions that actually work for you,
Yeah.
than if you basically keep it a little bit vague. And when you ask three different people, you might have three different problem statements, right? Which is not helpful for anyone.
It's a good approach, and I think it helps, like you said, the market understand, am I a fitting solution provider? I say it to prospective and existing clients all the time. We're a solution provider. If we don't have a solution to provide you with, then we're not doing our job, right? And on that same topic, I'm curious from your side, what do you think a good problem statement or kind of kind of headline that you would go to the market? What does that look like for a business? How do they formulate it correctly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely teamwork, right? I think that's the biggest thing, right? So,
Right.
maybe whatever the project lead has a tendency to say, well, okay, let me just have a go at it. But I really think it's something that needs to be written by the different stakeholders, and I mean, I personally think that one of the biggest challenges we have in procurement is that our procurement processes are not user friendly enough, right? The
Mm.
business, see them as, well, okay, well, there's all these compliance checks, etc., but you're not helping me to be successful with my business, and you don't help me with a streamlined kind of user friendly process that allows me to start working with the right suppliers, and
Right.
relatively soon. And one of the things we did, we measured the net promoter score of the procurement process. And I can tell you, in the beginning, people were very reluctant to do that, because they knew it was very, very bad. And it happened. It used to all take place in ERP, right? And that's just not just not the right technology for
Yeah.
procurement. Certainly not so.
Interesting. Okay. I'm curious then. If procurement's buying technology and they're professional buyers, do you think they have a harder time buying things that they're going to themselves use?
Yes. Yes. I think it's a little differently, right? Because on one side, we convinced our business stakeholders, to partner in the buying process when we look at buying technology for their domains, right?
Right.
Um, yeah. So I think it is a little harder. But yeah, I mean, and maybe just one thing, right? So when we go to market and we talk to providers, etc., one of the best ways to find out is actually talk to other customers of the provider, right? And when I help companies in the selection process, I usually put a pretty high value on how other customers are talking about the
Mm.
provider. And for some reason, buyers are like, well, they're not really out there to talk to others. And I mean, just going to DPW, I mean, there's so many customers of the providers that it's actually quite easy to find out who's working with who, and to see how happy they are with the provider, and if the
Right.
provider is really helping, able to solve the problem that they have. And I think there's a lot more kind of sharing that procurement needs to do to exchange experiences on, with the various providers, because it's not always transparent about how successful the teams are in solving the problems.
Right. Very interesting. And it maybe, again, inherently goes possibly against the fibers of procurement to go out and see your peers and try and share, for example, even if it might be with competition, understanding how they took their journey as well, right? Because you want to keep your cards close to your chest, because that's what you've been taught in a lot of ways, I think, in certain aspects. I think that, however, there is another party that plays a role in this, right? Which is the tech vendor themselves, which we as Kodiak are ourselves. And we recognize that we have a duty as a perspective and an existing partner as well to guide people a lot of times, I think, in their journey. What do you think in your experience advising ProcureTech companies? What do you think that ProcureTech companies need to do better to ensure that businesses are able to adopt their technology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I have a thing which is, I think in general, ProcureTech companies don't employ enough procurement professionals, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, right? So, and I mean, there are some ProcureTech companies that have founders from the procurement world, right? And I think that kind of, they were.
But Nico, isn't that story getting a bit old as well? Built by procurement people for procurement people.
It's a mix. I mean, yeah. So I see, sometimes companies that have very little understanding of the problem that
Mm.
they're kind of declared to be solving, but they haven't really lived with that problem, right? And I think if you've lived with I mean, for example, procurement is like, it's full of unstructured data, right? I mean, there's so many data elements that as a buyer or category manager you could be using, but you're already flooded with all kinds of reports and market intelligence and commodity prices and stories from your suppliers about why life is tough and pricing needs to be adjusted, right? So you get all these different and so that so that structured data, that unstructured data, or like all these buyers can't deal with more data, right? They need
Right.
actually ways to get the data structured in a way so they can use more data in driving decisions that make sense for their business.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, your question around what can ProcureTech do better? I mean, I think number one is customer success, right? It's
Yeah.
actually,
Okay.
I mean,
Delivery.
yes, and yeah, so you have some solutions where they look great, but it's just very, very difficult to get people to adopt them. And even if they have like a big name customer, if only 5 or 10% of the buyers actually using that
Right.
solution, then it's like, well, it's not a standard solution, right? So I mean, and I really believe in the power of 100% adoption, right? 100% adoption, right? Everybody should be using, let's say, e-sourcing. Everybody should be using a tool to collect commercial data from the market or from suppliers, right? Because that's also knowledge management. But a lot of companies have multiple e-sourcing solutions in their toolbox, but
Yeah.
people are still using Excel and email to collect prices from suppliers.
Yeah.
And I don't think those are, so adoption is, I mean, it's a bit like, when you look at real estate investments, right? It's location, location, location. When it comes to ProcureTech, it's the user experience, it's the UX, UX, UX.
Mm.
It's the core.
Yeah. Adoption, adoption, adoption.
Yes.
When it comes to the technology's capabilities and the capabilities of a procurement team, do you ever see that there's a need to close the gap? And also, how do you advise, for example, both procurement teams but also ProcureTech corporations that are looking to work with procurement teams to try and close that gap, right? That knowledge
Mhm.
gap between the two, and maybe that maturity gap as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have some experience, and we made some errors here in terms of, let's say, adoption of e-sourcing, right? So
Right.
we had this bell curve where we looked at, okay, well, we can segment the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, late majority, and the laggards. And we were very focused on, well, we want the majority to use the e-sourcing tool, right? So we were very focused on change management on the majority. However, the majority is, this many hundreds of people. Where do you start, right? And
Right.
in hindsight, and it took us a while to figure this out. And I mean, e-sourcing wasn't widely adopted at my previous employer, at least not in the beginning. Was to focus on the innovators
Mm.
and the early adopters, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you have a much smaller group, you treat them, like kings or queens. I mean, you treat them like, well, you are like a special group. We rely on you to drive change management for the broader organization.
Yeah.
We give you some special training, we give you some special insights. But then what you do is you change the procurement teams from the inside, right? So you have people that
Yeah.
are embedded within those teams and say, hey, why don't we use, do an e-auction on some of this stuff where we think the market conditions are right, and get people familiar with that technology to drive more value from the industry, right? So, and I think that was much more successful, right?
Yeah.
So, recruiting digital ambassadors and really change things from the inside. And when you get to 15% adoption, that's actually where, as a change manager, the 15% will change the other 85%, because
Mm.
people are just looking at, hey, these people can do stuff that I can't do. Why not? I'm kind of behind, and and let me try and use these tools.
Yeah.
And that was a good approach. And don't spend any time or energy on the laggards, right? I mean, they will probably move on anyway after some time when they figured out that the world has moved on and they haven't moved with it. So.
Right. Well, I'm curious though, because the innovators, the early adopters, they're always going to have like high expectations. There's this ideology of kind of hyper functionality that's coming into the tech space, whatever SaaS category that you're in, including ProcureTech, right? Because tools, especially the applications of AI, simple applications of generative AI, such as ChatGPT and other things, are rampant in our day to day, and it's as simple as opening up a browser, and I have one of the coolest kind of work tools I can have at my fingertips. Do you think though that even though maybe that majority is also leveraging those tools, that there remains a gap in kind of the maturity of being able to actually adopt solution and the expectations on hyper functionality? Or do you think, no, it's totally right, ProcureTech tools need to be hyper functional, they need to be at the cutting edge, they need to have the hottest thing in AI embedded already in their solution because everybody's already ready for it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, you see, like, a lot of like general productivity tools, right? That can be, create massive productivity benefits in the procurement space, right? So, analyzing offers, I mean, you get like 5 proposals from 5 suppliers in 5 different formats. One is a PDF, the other one is a PowerPoint, and the third one is an Excel. And I mean, if you just want a tool, to analyze these proposals and take the essence out of it, it's
Right.
incredibly powerful, right?
Mm.
So definitely, I think people should really experiment with those generic tools to drive productivity in their areas. And there's research done where you get like a group of university students or two groups. One is armed with ChatGPT, the other one isn't, and they basically look at the outcome of their work. And the conclusion is that the team that works with ChatGPT has a the quality of their output is 40% higher than the team that is not working with ChatGPT, right? So now, if you look at AI and embedding AI into procurement tools, I mean, everybody talks about it, and I think everybody's experimenting with it.
Right.
But I don't. I mean, you see some tools that are 100% focused on chat. I mean, so some people put like all their procurement data in an LLM and then drive conversation with the business users about what they're looking to order. So that starts to come, but it's relatively
And for
early.
our listeners that don't know, what's an LLM?
A large language model, right? So basically, it's basically putting the data together.
Mm.
Different. I mean, multimodal, right? So you have maybe spreadsheets, you have presentations, you have databases, you have emails, you have previous purchase orders, descriptions, whatever, right? I mean, anything that is considered to be like procurement related data. I
Yeah.
mean, you can put it into your large language model and basically answer questions from the user, right? I mean,
Right.
you want to order the same chairs as we ordered last time for this location, or you want to, yeah. I mean, so pretty exciting times um, for sure. But I don't think AI is gonna solve your bad data problem, right? So that's, I mean, it's magic in the way that it formulates responses. I think it's also magic in terms of how it reads loads of text. But when you look at a poor quality database, I don't see AI solve a quality problem on the data, that's the quality of the data that's generated in procurement. So I don't think it's a you still need a good foundation of kind of simple to use work processes that everybody uses to create good quality procurement data.
Good insights. Let's get out the crystal ball. Last question I wanted to ask. Trends. What do you think are going to be the biggest trends coming in the ProcureTech space in the next 3 to 5 years? And you can't say AI. I forbid it. If you want to say AI, though, then let's niche down and talk about an application of AI. But what do you see as the biggest trends? 2 or 3 trends that you're seeing coming down the pipe.
So I think more integration between solutions, right? So I think what you see is that big companies have many different applications active in the procurement space, but they haven't maybe integrated the data from these solutions, right? So what you have is that every solution becomes like a data silo, and some people know how to extract data from those solutions, and some people don't. And I mean, the strategy we had was basically we wouldn't have a solution that would be on its own, right? So we would extract the data from all of these solutions and put it in a data lake and feed it back to the business user, right? So you could drive analytics across the whole system infrastructure and not just go into solutions one by one to get the data out.
Yeah. So not consolidation necessarily, but integration. Just so we're clear.
Integration.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that, and you see that with these app marketplaces, right? So I think, I mean, both Coupa has this app marketplace with whatever 400 different solutions that are integrated. SAP has an app marketplace as well, and you see that I mean, it's the only way to manage multiple solutions, right? And procurement needs more than one solution because there's so many specific issues or elements that procurement needs to look at. That it's about integration of these different solutions
Yeah.
into, and I call it like the technology stack, right? So instead of
Yeah.
advising on like, well, here's a good platform, it's like, well, okay, what's going to be the future technology stack? It's very interesting, right? Because it's all about how things integrate between solutions. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Very cool. And I think that what you hit on there is something that's interesting that made me have to ask just one more question, because you said, a procurement team needs more than just one thing, right?
Right.
The processes are so differentiated between source to contract to supplier lifecycle management to purchase to pay to risk management, right? They're very
Yeah.
different disciplines, very, very different processes. So do you believe that the days of best of breed is still well and alive, or do you think that there's going to be a consolidation back to the suite approach?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the two worlds are will be coming together, in my opinion, right? So I still think that if your core procurement process runs in ERP, then you don't do yourself a favor because you can't take advantage of all these solutions, because we all know that it's a real dog to integrate solutions into ERP, right? And every
Right.
integration is massively expensive, and integration errors and complexity, etc. So I do think you're better off to move your core procurement process to the cloud, to something that's user friendly for your business users and your suppliers, and then you build specific solutions into that for, let's say, risk or sustainability or supplier data. And I think that if you look at, we look at Salesforce, right? Which actually Salesforce is now a bigger company than SAP when it comes
Right.
to their revenue, right? So they've grown very fast, but the complexity of what people sell compared to the complexity of what people buy, I think in many cases there's like 100x difference, right? And therefore, it's kind of, maybe with Salesforce, you can meet all the requirements of the entire sales organization and
Mm,
all the countries, and it's like multi-channel or omni-channel in terms of selling into the various markets. The product portfolio that's being sold is still relatively narrow compared to everything
right.
that's bought on the front end. And if you think about the category manager for fleet or for packaging or for chemicals or for IT, and look at what data they need and what's important when they buy, corrugated or palm oil, or it's varied, right? It's very varied, and I think the only way to deal with those various needs is to have data integrated between different solutions.
Great insights, and thank you for sharing them. Love to have you on today's episode, Nico. Some awesome insights, both for people that are on the practitioner side that are looking at their own technology stack or trying to get inspired on how they can be able to develop it, but also for ProcureTech vendors that are out there, other leaders like myself or founders that I know also listen into to the episode. So thank you for sharing those insights. We want to finish on a quick fire round that we do with all of our guests. A few quick questions, one word or one sentence answers. Ready for that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All expenses paid trip. You're heading on a flight tomorrow. Where are you heading?
Whoa, poof. Well, I would go for an adventure in Madagascar.
Very nice. A book or a podcast that you're listening to right now or is on your bedside table. It doesn't need to be about the professional life either.
Um, yes, the relationship between culture and technology adoption. I was recently in Japan, which used to be a super advanced economy, bullet trains everywhere, etc. And I realized that because the culture is very perfectionistic and conservative, they struggle to reform and take advantage of many of the new tech that's out there. So it's something that really intrigues me, how those two things are related. And also in Europe, you're based Sweden, I guess, right? The north of
Yes.
Europe. You see that within Europe, there's massive differences in technology adoption, which is partly driven by cultural differences, in my opinion. So that's one. That's the social science of technology, basically. Yeah, yeah.
Very cool. A book or a podcast?
A podcast, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. And we have a saying in Sweden that it's our paradrätt, which is the thing that you would invite somebody over to dinner and make for them, and you'd be able to impress them, so to say. What would be your paradrätt if I'm coming over for dinner, Nico?
For dinner, I'm. Well, I think I would. I've got this Kamado Joe in the garden, and it's like that's the. I'm not a huge cook, but I can do like a lamb, a leg of lamb, for example, right? Which basically needs whatever 6 hours on low heat, and that's what I would offer my guests.
Sounds perfectly fine. And hey, I'm fine with ordering pizza as well, so no worries. But thank you so much for taking the time. If people want to be able to get in touch with you, learn more about what you guys are doing at Digital Procurement Now, seek out your advisory services, and or just be a part of your network, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah. So I mean, LinkedIn probably the best, and then the website is dpnow.ai, right? So I did jump on the AI bandwagon and renamed changed the address to .ai, because I do think that we live in the times of AI, and I think it's a big game changer for us. So
rightfully so. dpnow.ai.
Right.
Go there now if you're looking for advisory services. Nico, thank you for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom with our listeners today.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, Sam. Appreciate it.